I am a mother.
A father.
Son.
Daughter.
Brother.
A sister.
I am a student.
A stay-at-home mom.
Construction worker.
Volunteer.
I am loving.
Smart.
Funny.
Generous.
Way too generous.
I am all of the amazing things you see.
But there's something you can't see.
Or don't see.
Something that I don't let anybody see.
Like when I'm alone.
In a room full of people.
You can't get out of bed.
And maybe I've gained weight.
Or lost weight.
Why do men always lose weight?
It can get dark in here.
Really dark.
Addicted to food.
The web.
Work.
Sex.
Alcohol.
Something to take the pain away.
To feel happy.
To feel something.
Anything.
Nothing.
Because depression isn't a mood.
It's not a passing thing.
Or a bad day.
It's a disease.
I can't just get over it.
It feels like I'm underwater.
Drowning.
And sometimes I think you'd be better off without me.
I am telling you this. All of this.
Because I need help.
And you are my wife.
My dad.
My husband.
My kids.
My boss.
So please, don't judge me.
Leave me.
Fire me.
Please, be patient.
Don't give up on me.
Just be there for as long as it takes.
Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't real.
I am so excited. Sorry, just making sure my mic worked. I'm so excited to be able to introduce to you Francesco Rizzo-Duffy. Francesco is a 2013 graduate of Kean University. He's both a licensed marriage and family therapist and a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor. Francesco completed the dual major program with Kean University in Rutgers in psychology and psychiatric rehabilitation and earned his master's degree in marriage and family therapy from Seton Hall University. Throughout the last decade of his career, he's worked with couples, families, and individuals from diverse cultures with various concerns, including navigating relationships, facing depression and anxiety, recovering from substance abuse, LGBTQIA+ issues, and more. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Hi, good morning, good morning. Wow, it is so cool to be here right now. Thank you so much for having me. I want to take a moment to express my gratitude because it's really an honor to be here. To be able to come back to the place that paved the way for my career and speak about something that's so truly important and meaningful to me is so special. So thank you again. One of my favorite quotes that you may be familiar with is, "Everyone you meet is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. Be kind always." I'd actually like to start with inviting you all to join me in a breathing exercise. This is something I do often with my clients to help with feeling grounded, relaxed, and focused. This exercise will consist of inhaling nice and deeply through your nose for a count of 4 seconds, holding that breath for 4 seconds, exhaling through your mouth for 4 seconds, and holding again. You're going to repeat this pattern until you feel like it. Today we're going to do that for just a minute. You can follow along with the visual behind me for the breathing exercise.
that, Francesco. In addition to giving us all a better sense of inner calm, I think the exercise really helps to set the stage for our conversation this morning. So it's probably safe to say that in some way, everyone's been affected by the ongoing pandemic. What can you tell us about what you're seeing regarding its impact on mental health, and what do you think the future holds?
It's so hard for me to believe that it's been over 2 years since most of us were locked down in our homes, afraid, confused, and anxious to get our hands on supplies like toilet paper and disinfectants. I can speak from a personal level of experience that it was much different in our home, as my husband and I are both essential workers and we're working in the field every single day, all while trying to get married that June. That definitely brought a different set of challenges and an entirely new level of anxiety and grief that we had never experienced before. I'm so thankful that I was not alone through all of that during that period of time. My husband and I really pushed each other through in the face of adversity. But so many other people were alone. And they were left alone not just in an emotional sense, but in a social sense as well. I'd like to share some national statistics with you all. Now, we know that mental health issues are nothing new, but COVID-19 has become an accelerant to the depth and breadth of the crisis that we face over the next decade. The National Survey on Drug Use and Health was conducted prior to March of 2020 and found that 1 in 5 adults in the United States experienced a mental illness, most often depression and anxiety. Half of Americans were expected to deal with a mental health symptom or crisis in their lifetime. Half of us. After a systemic review of data reporting for a prevalence of depression and anxiety disorders, we see these numbers have been exacerbated by the effects of the pandemic. We're seeing a 27% increase in depressive disorders and a 25% increase in anxiety disorders. That's 129 million new cases. 129 million. And that's just with the amount of people that are seeking treatment, just the people that are reporting their symptoms. Millions of people across the globe are struggling with their mental health symptoms and don't seek help due to being in denial, fear, stigma, and a host of other reasons. So I anticipate the actual data would indicate that the numbers for people struggling with depression, anxiety, grief, or isolation are much higher, pushing us towards what I'm calling a second pandemic and a global health crisis. I want to share a clip from the World Health Organization that really highlights what it's been like from a sampling of people across the different parts of the world dealing with mental health symptoms since the pandemic.
Our lockdowns, as we've had, have really impacted on my anxiety and well-being.
It made me worried a lot, worried about my well-being, my health, and my future.
My head was heavy. I couldn't talk or I couldn't say what was wrong.
Como paciente de Parkinson, los síntomas han aumentado en este último año y medio. También ha tenido que ver con el encierro propio de la pandemia.
मैं ऑलरेडी पहले से डिप्रेस थी और उस पे और डिप्रेशन आते जा रहा था तो
I just fell into a pit and I couldn't get out of it. So that is when I felt that I should get this checked.
I reached out to a friend who also a counselor for Youth Center for Mental Health, and he able to give me counseling sessions.
When I reached out to a psychologist, that was when I was diagnosed with clinical depression. I could give a name to what was wrong. I was able to share with family members, and then everyone tried their possible best to be there for me.
जैसे रुकैया दी से शेयर किया, काउंसलर से शेयर किया, फ्रेंड्स से शेयर किया, तो वैसे ही धीरे-धीरे मतलब वो मुझे ऐसा महसूस होने लगा कि हाँ मेरी गलती तो थी नहीं.
Therapy has helped me to come through this really dark time. There's no words for me to describe honestly the importance of it because I think it really saved my life.
It helped me cope with my anxiety, helped me with my depression.
That led me into a safer and a peaceful state of mind.
I think what I would love to see is where is a community, a place where we treat mental health the same way we treat every other form of health.
Es importante que los países con economías más golpeadas tengan apoyos de países con economías más fuertes, porque las enfermedades no distinguen fronteras.
Counselors should be there in schools, in institutions.
I wanted to speak truth to power and say, listen to us. I'm hoping that the world is going to have a different view of mental illness.
The impacts of this extreme mental health crisis, coupled with the related economic and social upheaval, will reverberate for decades, if not a generation. As a therapist, I think about the impact of this pandemic on people around the world. Most children were forced to trade in their in-school experiences for homebound remote classes, missing out on the social, emotional learning that is critical to a healthy child and adolescent development. All of us will continue to navigate our grief for what we lost during this time: jobs, businesses, livelihoods, cherished time with loved ones, and more important than anything else, our beloved members of our friends, families, and communities who were taken from us too soon. I hypothesize that we will continue to see the trend remain steady as we come to terms with the new norms imposed by the pandemic. These challenges we face have become even more difficult as we fight for social justice and world politics continue to wreak havoc on our mental health at the same time. It feels like we haven't gotten a break to regroup. There are many people having a particularly hard time with managing their symptoms and unfortunately turn to self-medicating, which opens up a whole other concern. On the contrary, COVID-19 has also accelerated positive momentum in our communities to raise awareness about these issues and increase accessibilities to crucial support and mental health services. Across diverse communities and industries, we're seeing more open conversations about how people are feeling, the challenges they're facing, and the kinds of resources they're using to manage such concerns. Public perceptions of mental illness are softening, and conversations about the issue are becoming more frequent, open, and inclusive, particularly among younger people, like we're doing here today.
Francesca, you mentioned something about self-medicating. What exactly is that? How do we know if we're doing that, and what can we do to get help if we are?
That's a great question. So self-medicating is a term that's used when people turn to substances like alcohol, marijuana, medication, and other drugs in an attempt to deal with any kind of physical or emotional concerns without the guidance of a doctor. Without diving too much into the experience of the pandemic, we do know that the sales of alcohol increased during 2020 as people had more time, less things to keep themselves occupied, and felt like they needed some relief during that terrifying time. Unfortunately, we are now seeing that substance abuse disorders have also been magnified since the start of the pandemic. Excessive drinking or binge drinking has been increased by 21%, leading to more mental health and medical issues. I want to show a clip that emphasizes this.
When we break it down, we've got two sets of people. There was the people who didn't have a substance use problem, and then COVID occurred, and there's the ones who had the problem, and it's just sort of been brewing. There's this period of time where people aren't working, they're stressed out, they're anxious, they're bored. And it just happened. They were bored and they had all this free time and they used. Most of my patients, not all of them, they have an inability to cope with life. So either they don't like how they're feeling, so they take a substance to make themselves feel better. Like guys usually use because they like that high. They like, having beers with the boys, stuff like that. Or there's the other side of it who use to cope with stress and anxiety. It's just an inability to cope. You're turning to a substance instead of dealing with life. To me, the true criteria with substance use is continued use in the face of negative consequences. So if your health is hurting, you're having problems in your relationship, you've lost jobs, you're going into work hungover, you're having all these negative consequences and you still continue to use. Sure, lots of people have, a beer, a glass of wine, that's okay. If you're actually only having one glass, but again, let's talk about glass sizes. Are you measuring 5 ounces of wine or are you pouring it into a big cup? People think this is a choice, this or that. You know what? I know for a fact it's a disease. For that person with an addiction problem, it is not a choice. It is part of their being. It's unnatural for them not to use. The true treatment with any of these problems is counseling or 12-step work or group therapy, or it's when, again, going back to the inability.
Which we know is legal, it can become really tricky to gauge if there is an underlying issue, especially because it's predominantly socially accepted and maybe a person can function in the community. Continued use in the face of negative consequences. The video mentions this key element that really defines substance abuse. Some other telltale signs that you should seek help from a professional are you have the need to have or want to use a substance regularly. You find yourself obsessing about when your next high or buzz is, and you make that over precedent over personal or professional responsibilities. You notice you need more of a particular substance in order to get the same effect, so your body's building tolerance. You feel like you need to cover up, hide, or lie about your substance use. This substance use is impacting and causing disruptions in different areas of your life, like your job, medical issues, financial issues, parenting, relationship issues, or legal issues. You've lost the ability to self-regulate, meaning you can't just have one. Most importantly, if your friends, family, or peers are telling you that they're concerned about your substance use, it may be time to seek help.
This is really helpful in providing insights and things to look for if we or our loved ones might be struggling with substance abuse. Switching gears a little bit, from your position as a professional counselor, how exactly does one do this therapy thing?
So not only am I a therapist and I provide support and counsel to my clients, but for 45 glorious minutes a week, I also identify as a client. Like I said, it's really important to have somebody to talk to about anything. It may feel like a new frontier when you embark on a journey of starting treatment, even if you benefited from therapy in the past. But the process isn't entirely unfamiliar. Metaphorically, and I emphasize that, finding a therapist is a bit like dating or meeting a new colleague or peer. You may have looked up their online profile before you met, you saw a picture, you read a short and sweet bio, got a flavor for their personal philosophy, but until you two are sitting across from each other, you really don't know if there's going to be chemistry. It should be obvious pretty quickly. Ideally, each of you should feel comfortable around one another. There's something in common between you, maybe even a shared attitude. Just because there's chemistry doesn't mean the union will be effective either, of course. There's still plenty of work to be done. But if the chemistry isn't there, you can't just keep seeing that person just to be nice. It makes more sense to move on. Personally, I believe that there's no cookie-cutter approach to therapy. Every client and every session are different, and I individualize my techniques based on the client's goals and needs. A client must click with a therapist and vice versa. Sometimes even a therapist might feel like they're not a great match. Most therapists offer consultations, which are brief 15-minute calls, so the therapist and the client can get an idea of each other's personality, the therapist's background and competency, and what the client may be experiencing. For a personal anecdote, I would like to call on my husband, James, to share a story of how we found our therapist. Hi, James.
So after we got engaged, we went to find a therapist to do premarital counseling. We found somebody we liked. We were so excited. We got there early, had our notebooks ready to go. And then we both left the session and we were like, this is not the vibe. We were like, no. So like instead of running to McDonald's first, we like went home and went online and looked up a new therapist, and we saw a few profiles and we reached out to Sarah, was her name, and we had a 15-minute conversation with her, got the sense of how she works, what her like techniques would be to help us get ready to get married, and we've been with her ever since.
Thank you so much for sharing. So we can definitely relate to others who have had similar experiences with finding a therapist. After each session, it's important to check in with yourself. Was the conversation labored or was it effortless? How did you feel about them? More importantly, how did you feel about yourself? Do you feel like this is going to be the start of a new beginning? Some people, and then what do you say, like when you first get to therapy? Do you spill everything right away? Some people do. It's like an unburdening, as if they're unburdening themselves for the first time. There's an outpour of the most painful and difficult times in their lives told in chronological order. Others, they choose to hold on to the more sensitive material until they know that they can trust the therapist will respond with compassion. Typically, traditional therapy consists of weekly 45-minute sessions, but that varies and it's case by case, and there's no one way to do therapy. Over time, clients feel the confidence to taper off, and it's not uncommon to be in therapy for long-term for continued maintenance or support.
When you put it that way, it doesn't sound quite so overwhelming and intimidating. And in fact, it sounds like it's much more of a collaborative process than I would have thought. It also sounds like you're pretty deliberate in creating safe spaces for your clients and allowing them to kind of move along at their own pace.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I'm so glad. So one of my goals that I hope to accomplish here today is to let people know that it's okay to ask for help. It's nothing to be ashamed of or judged upon. People go to the gym to strengthen their muscles and improve their wellness. Therapy is no different. It's kind of like the gym for your brain. To your mention about a safe space, I really do make it a priority to not only provide that safe and approachable atmosphere, but I allow my clients to have a space where they feel so comfortable to take off their masks and be their true, authentic selves, all while furnishing them with the coping skills and tools that they need for long-term results. Some people are seeking treatment because they don't have a strong support network to lean on, or they may feel like a burden to others. Some people may feel shut out or even criticized about their symptoms and their need for more support. That's the last thing we want to convey in a therapeutic environment. I must say it's normal for a therapist to nudge someone along, challenge their behaviors and thoughts in order to promote a client's desired growth and change.
You know, this conversation is really resonating with me on a very personal level. As I'm sure it was for so many people, the isolation of COVID really brought up so many of my own issues, and it took me a really long time to ask for help. And when I finally did and got matched with a therapist in what I call the deli counter method, where you just kind of get hooked up with whoever is next in line, I had no chemistry with my therapist. And we were doing this virtually, so we were in a room, or she was in a room, and the only decoration on the wall was a picture of the Last Supper. So that evokes a whole lot of stuff for me as somebody who grew up Catholic, and the way that I live my life is not really consistent with Catholic teaching. So every time I went into that room, I felt like I was being, it was just reinforcing all the bad stuff for me. So I ended up firing her. But fortunately, I stayed committed to the concept of therapy and found somebody who really much better meets my needs and makes me want to go to the session every week. So, Francesca, why is it so hard for people to find treatment?
So first, I want to validate that experience for you and how difficult and discouraging that must have been. I'm so happy that you actually took the next step in finding a different person instead of giving up at that point.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's really important. So we're living in a time where we're still paving the way to normalize mental health and treatment. A huge barrier to treatment is affordability. There is usually a high deductible and out-of-pocket cost that you need to meet in order to get services at somewhat of a reasonable cost, depending on your plan's copay. Unfortunately, mental health treatment is mostly accessible to those who can afford it. My hope for this conference is not just to reduce the stigma attached to asking for help, but also to bring awareness that we need to advocate for accessible mental health treatment, because mental health treatment is our human right, not a luxury. I want to dive into giving our guests and viewers here today that are interested in taking the next steps in talking to someone some resources that may help with the process. First steps are calling your insurance provider to get a list of your benefits and coverage. Then you can either use their directory or sites like Psychology Today to find someone that meets your needs. Keep in mind that many insurance plans may have an overall deductible that you may need to meet before your insurance will kick in and cover any or part of your treatment. More often than not, this information is what leaves people hopeless and discouraged because it might not be affordable to somebody. The good news is There are things out there that you can look for that may get you the help that you need. For instance, learning about your job's Employee Assistance Program, or EAP. Most companies have one, and many offer free counseling for their employees. Getting counseling through an EAP is completely confidential, and your employer will not receive any information about your sessions or that you've even called the EAP to receive services. Another option is checking out the outpatient psychology program at nearby universities and colleges. There are students that are hungry to help at little to no cost. Kean University provides wonderful mental health services to the community, including telehealth therapy free of charge. For the people person, there's a lot of group therapy opportunities that can allow you to get affordable treatment while being able to share your story, hear from others, and get advice from a professional at the same time. There are also many services online or through apps like BetterHelp that allow you to connect with your therapist anytime, anywhere, through messages or even a video chat if you're looking for a more face-to-face experience. Another great resource is OpenPath. The OpenPath Psychotherapy Collective is a nonprofit nationwide network of licensed mental health clinicians in private practice. They help people who either lack mental health insurance or are underinsured and otherwise can't afford to work with a therapist to get linked to a provider for as little as $30 per session. I'm actually part of this admirable initiative myself as a way to give back to the community and help people in need, so I think this is really just wonderful. Finally, another important resource is the Mental Health Association in New Jersey. Many counties in New Jersey have a mental health association. In fact, there's one down the road in Springfield on Morris Ave. They strive for children and adults to achieve victory over mental health and substance use disorders through advocacy, education, training, and services, free from stigma and other barriers to care and recovery. Now, I know we're coming up on time, so I want to just end with a quote. Don't judge your feelings, notice them. Use them as your map. Don't be afraid of the truth.
Thanks, Francesco, for this great conversation. Francesco has also provided for us these resources. We've got flyers out in the lobby for you to grab if you'd like, and we'll send them out via email after the conference is over. We do have a little bit of time for some questions if anybody is curious about what we've been talking about.
Hi, I just have a question because I know there's a lot of kids who don't have access to therapists for many reasons, so I was wondering what advice would you give to their counselors as to how to like deal with the pandemic and how it affects them?
I think the first thing that we need to do is open up a conversation and really allow, kids to express their feelings and not punish them for acting out or having behavioral issues because they're grieving inside. So it's really important to just kind of sit with them and really start to have that conversation. What are you feeling? You're feeling frustrated. You're feeling, lonely. It's okay. I can understand. I can understand why you're feeling lonely. So validating their emotion and then kind of talking to them. Okay, well, what can we do to help you feel more connected to the community? Help you feel more connected to your friends. So having that conversation is. And recognizing emotions is number one. Thank you so much for that question.
You're welcome.
I'm a student at Montclair High School, and I struggle with substance abuse currently and have been self-medicating. I'm not exactly sure how to seek treatment to fully recover, but I am in the process of recovery. I just wanted to know, are there resources that you can seek to help improve your quality of life without having to self-medicate?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to thank you so much for sharing that with us. So with substance abuse recovery or any kind of mental health symptom management, it's different person by person. Some people may need therapy once, twice a week. Some people need to go for substance abuse, maybe you need to go to a detox or a rehab. There's a lot of different methods to treatment, and that's one that's best discussed with your doctor or a professional. We can definitely connect after the conference, and I can better explain more resources, but those resources are going to be provided outside at the mental health resources. There's tons of substance abuse resources and stuff that are available to you. But again, the first thing to do is just have that conversation, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Hi.
Hi. So I have a kind of a weird question. So how do I cope with people invalidating my emotions and my strong feelings just because I'm an adult? Like, people like judge me and tend to say I'm childish, I'm immature, I'm impulsive, I'm this, I'm that, just because like I act out, I lash out at people when I'm angry. I struggle with mental health problems for as long as I can remember. I've had like, and I'm still trying to recover from trauma, but it's very hard for me at times, and it's hard for me to like cope when people just don't get it and then just continue it.
Yeah. So that sounds really, really hard, right? So you're dealing with symptoms and people aren't recognizing what you're going through, and they say, oh, just grow up, just get over it.
Yeah, I had a professor who did that to me. I don't want to like, say their name, but I have been through this recently.
I'm so sorry that you have that experience.
They're just like, grow up, you need to stop it.
Yeah. So I think one thing that you can do is maybe try to educate those people in what you're experiencing, what symptoms you're experiencing, and like, hey, this is a part of me. This is not who I am. I'm not irritable. I'm just going through something, and I would really appreciate your support. So asking people for what you need, not just talking about what you're experiencing, but what you need from the other person. Hey, I would really just like you to listen, for a few minutes. I'm really going through something, and just asking for that help.
And I also have like, what if your parents are the people who are doing that as well?
What if what?
Your parents are the ones who are also doing that, because I have a parent who like refuses to even acknowledge that I'm going through stuff and that I'm upset, and he just insists that I'm just immature and that it's a choice and it's on purpose.
Sometimes we need to set boundaries with certain people. Sometimes it's the people that are closest to us. But if they're not understanding and they refuse to understand, and they continue to make you or contribute to you feeling not well, then it might be good to set some boundaries with people in your life to kind of separate yourself from that. If you're not going to give me the support that I need, then maybe, I need to kind of take a step back and work on myself and not put myself in that.
That's what I did. I just decided to distance myself because I know he's not going to change, or I can't force him unless he wants to. So I just realized that I'm done with this type of behavior, and I just want to focus on myself and not make my mental health worse.
Good for you.
Good for you. Okay, we have time for just one more question.
Hi.
So my mom struggles with substance abuse, so like what advice do you have for like that type of dynamic? Like how can I be like supportive and like, in that kind of situation?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. That kind of depends on where your mom is at in her recovery process. Like if this is causing you stress or distress, then obviously you need to kind of practice what I had just mentioned too, setting those boundaries and not making yourself fully responsible for your mom. You have to take care of yourself. You can provide the resources. I always say you can lead a horse to water, but if they don't drink, they don't drink, right? But you need to take care of yourself. So that's one thing that you can do to support her, is be there for her and love her and give her the resources and say, hey, if you really want help, I'm here to help, and I'm here to find help with you. But for those who are struggling with that and they're not being, it's not being reciprocated by the other person, then you do need to set the boundary for yourself. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Francesca, for
Thank
being
you.
with us this morning.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Thanks.